What has impressed you most since you've come to Souderton Church back in January of 2005? We're talking with Pastor Jim Wiverding, the present pastor of Souderton SDA Church.
That's a good question. It's something that I've actually reflected on recently quite a bit. I think when I first came in January, I was impressed with the warmth and the kindness of the congregation, and I saw some pillar saints here. And I think I came in with the same idea that many pastors come into a congregation with, that, all right, we need to now take this congregation to the next level. If I come in with the right leadership, some great things can happen and we can do more for God. And I don't think that was wrong. But over the next few months, as I started to visit members of the congregation, I had the same experience over and over again. I remember being struck each time I would sit down with someone who had been here for some time, with just how much God had done in and through those people in the past decades. And so it switched from an experience of feeling like I can come in and help this church go to the next level to more of an experience of learning. What can I learn from these people and what they've done? Kind of, to put an image on it, it's kind of like a boy getting excited at a thunderstorm. You know, it's this big thing you just don't quite understand. It's too big to wrap your mind around, but it's somehow both scary because it's bigger than you, and it's drawing because something special is happening. And so over the last few years, I've more and more had that feeling that something over the last century now, something special has been happening here that God has been doing. And it may not have always been exactly everything that the congregation wanted, but after 100 years, the congregation continues. Having planted at least one other congregation, had probably hundreds of people come through here who were baptized and may have moved on to another area, may have even passed on and are waiting for the resurrection, but hundreds of lives have been touched, and it's just God doing something here.
Amen. We're talking with Mark Wolfinger, senior member of the Souderton Seventh-day Adventist Church. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about the history of the church, beginning back in 1909 to its present location, beginning in 1969 here at 207 East Broad Street?
The church was first organized, as I recall it. Of course, 1909 was before my time, but it was organized in the first building that the church owned in this area was in Fair Hill, Pennsylvania, on Fair Hill Road. And they organized there and functioned there for some years, and there was a great deal of family involved in the church there, a large family. And little by little, the family members moved away, went to college and so on, the younger people. And little by little, the numbers dwindled. And they got to a point where they sold that church. And they met temporarily, I guess I call it temporarily, in the Moose Hall in Sellersville. And at that point, in 1929, my parents joined the church. And I first attended there as a small child in 1929 in the Moose Hall. And we met there for some years until there was a evangelistic meeting in Lansdale by Elder Vanderman, Senior Elder Vanderman. And he had to tent meetings in Lansdale. And we lived next door to a family whose husband was one of the original members of the Fair Hill Church, but he was no longer attending church anymore, but his wife was. And she talked to my mother, and my mother decided she was going to go to these meetings in Lansdale. And so she went, and my dad went too. And little by little, they followed these meetings and were then finally baptized by this Elder Vanderman. And that's when there was some other folks, and I can't name them all, also joined the church at that time. And the group grew enough that they decided they needed a building again. And that's when, in 1929, the church was dedicated in Telford on County Line Road. And, I guess really it wasn't in the Telford borough, but it was called the Telford Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we met there until the move that took place into Souderton.
County Line was a Sears Roebuck church.
Oh, okay.
It was bought from Sears Roebuck,
Oh.
and Mark Wolfinger's father erected it.
Oh,
And right away, they partitioned off 12 feet of the back of it and made a church school. We filled this, the church was very small, we filled the seats, and we decided that maybe it'd be good if we could build a new church. And we got a committee, and we went around and looked over church sites, and we just never really came up with what we thought we needed. And then this present church happened to come on the market through the Zion Mennonite Church building a new one, and it came up for auction, and that's how we came to acquire this church.
Our church, it had become too small for our congregation and for our Sabbath school facilities and so forth. So we purchased a lot on Church Road in Telford, intending to build a church as soon as we had enough money in hand. Then I had gone to my dentist, Dr. Gaugler, in Souderton, and he said, you know, our church is going to complete the building of the new church on Cherry Lane. That's the Zion Mennonite Church, and we're interested in selling the church on Broad Street, Souderton. Would your congregation be interested in buying it? And I said, well, Dr. Grover, I'll talk to the church board and see if they're interested. And I believe he gave me a price that they were asking of $30,000. So I spoke to the church board, and they said, well, seeing as it's an older building and it will take some repairs, we believe that we should not spend that much money. We should build the new church that we're planning to build. So I said, fine, I'll tell Dr. Gaugler. So I called him on the telephone and told him that they decided that it would not be to our advantage to do that, to purchase the church from the Zion Mennonite.